Hey friends, we are looking at chapter 3. We're still talking about operations on rational numbers, and today we're going to talk about dividing rational numbers. Let's take a look at our vocabulary. We have two vocabulary words today, multiplicative inverse and reciprocal. Multiplicative inverse is a term that you should be relatively familiar with. Multiplicative inverse, I'm going to give you an example or give you a symbolic definition of what it means. A times B is equal to 1. So if A times B is equal to 1, then A and B are multiplicative inverses of one another. All right? So now what does this mean? What kind of a situation will you get A times some other number B is equal to 1? I hope you guys are thinking about this, and I hope you're thinking about the fact that if we had, let's say, some number written as C over D, if I multiplied it by D over C, it's reciprocal. That's the word that we're about to get to now. If I multiplied it by C over D, I'd get 1. So a number and its multiplicative inverses must be reciprocals, and we'll talk about what a reciprocal is. So we see an example of a reciprocal. A reciprocal of a number refers to interchanging the denominator with the numerator. So a number's reciprocal is a number with the numerator and denominator interchange. So you just have that flip there. So a decent symbolic example would be A over B and B over A would be reciprocals of one another. Let's go on to a few examples. So looking at example 1 over here, take these off. Looking at example 1, we need to find the multiplicative inverse of each number. So I need to figure out what do I need to multiply 7 over 16 by in order to get 1. Well, since our last discussion, I'm sure that you guys are very comfortable with the fact that it will be its reciprocal, 16 over 7. And because I multiply these two together and I get 1, I recognize that this is indeed the multiplicative inverse. Let's look at this value here. So to find the multiplicative inverse of a mixed number, we need to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. So I'm actually going to just put a little arrow down here. Let me work in white. And I'm going to write this number as negative 19 over 3. So what I did is I multiplied 6 times 3, which is 18, and added 1. And I just bring the negative on along for the ride, right? So I don't want you to think that you're taking a negative 6 times a positive 3 and all that stuff. Just if you have a negative mixed number, you're just going to bring that negative along for the ride. All right, so now that we have this number as an improper fraction, we need to write its multiplicative inverse. And its multiplicative inverse would be the reciprocal, so 3 over 19, but it has to be negative 3 over 19 because remember, we want our answer to be 1. So our answer here is negative 3/19. Make sense? All right, I hope so. Let's take a look at a basic concept that I want you to keep in mind. Whenever you are dividing fractions, what you're going to end up doing is changing your division to multiplication, and you're going to change the fraction that you have on the right of the division sign. You're going to change it to its reciprocal. And so that's what you're seeing here. All right? And we're going to practice this several times. So A over B divided by C over D is really A over B times the reciprocal, D over C. Okay? And what you have here is when all of these numbers B, C, and D are not equal to 0. Let's think about what would happen if they were. Well, if B, C, or D were equal to 0, we'd be dividing by 0, which is a big problem, okay? So that's what this basic concept means, and we're going to move on to our example 2. So example 2 asks us to divide by a fraction or a whole number, given the situation that we have here. And we're going to just do what we got to do. So I'm going to come down here. I know that in a way this is kind of like keep, change, change. You keep this one, you change this one, and then you flip this one and change it that way. You don't change it with the sign. But anyway, I don't want to confuse you. So what we did is we rewrote the problem as a multiplication problem and took the reciprocal of the number that followed the division sign. And so what I'm going to do is multiply. But you know what? I'm into using our shortcut. Is there any pair of diagonal numbers that have common factors? I hope you've seen that 9 and 12 do. So 9 and 12 both can be divided by 3. When I divide 9 by 3, I get 3, and when I divide 12 by 3, I get 4. And now I'm just going to multiply straight across. 1 times 4 is 4, and 3 times 5 is 15. And that's my answer for this first one. So it's 4/15. This next problem over here is very similar. However, when I look at this 8, I'm going to look at it as the 8 over 1 because I'm going to take the reciprocal of that. So 3 over 7 times 8 over 1, no, the reciprocal is 1 over 8. Can I cross cancel anywhere? Doesn't look like it. These guys are what we'll call mutually prime. They have no common factors, and these guys, I know 8 isn't prime, but together, like if you had to find a common factor, they're mutually prime. And 7 and 1 have no common factors except 1, which is not helpful, so I'm going to multiply straight across. I get 3 over 7 times 8 is 56, and stick a fork in me, I'm done. That's it for that problem. Let's look at example 3. So example 3, we're still doing division. Now we're doing division, we're going to divide by mixed numbers, and the rule still applies for multiplication of mixed numbers. Do you remember what we did last time? In the last video I mentioned that it's really important for you to change your mixed numbers into, do you remember? Improper fractions. Very good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our negative 4 2/3, and we're dividing that by 3 1/9, and I'm going to change this. Remember, this negative is coming along for the ride, so I'm just going to put the negative here, and I'm going to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So 4 times 3 is going to give me 12, plus 2 more is going to give me 14. So I've got 14 over 3 here, negative 14/3, and I'm dividing it by 3 times 9 is 27, plus 1 more is 28, 28 over 9. My next step is to leave the first term exactly the same, change that division to multiplication, and then take the reciprocal of the number following the division sign, and that will be 9 over 28. This looks like a wonderful opportunity to do some cross canceling. I see that 14 goes into 28 2 times, and 14 goes into itself 1 time. So I'm left with this. 1 here and a positive 2 here. 3 and 9 have a common factor, which is 3. 3 goes into itself 1 time, and 3 goes into a 9 3 times. So this is pretty cool. I'm just left to multiply through. Don't forget your negative. This is a negative times a positive, which is going to give me a negative. I'm going to bring that negative right over there. I'm going to multiply 1 times 3 gives me 3. And 1 times 2 gives me 2. Did I mention that I don't mind if you leave it as an improper fraction, particularly if you weren't asked to do anything with it? So I'm actually really comfortable with this answer as negative 3 over 2. Let's look at our maybe final example. Nope, not our final example, our almost final example. So we're looking at this example. It's a standardized test example, so it's multiple choice. Tessa feeds her dog Roscoe 3 3/4 cups of dog food per day. If she buys a bag of food containing 164 cups, how many days will the bag of food last? Don't get confused by all of the fractions. Just look at it for what it is. Sometimes when I have word problems with fractions, I take the fractions out because it helps me think through it. So what if the problem said, what if Tessa feeds her dog Roscoe 2 cups of dog food per day, and she has a bag of dog food that has 100 cups? You would easily know to divide, and probably since this section is division, you knew to divide, but that's exactly what we would do. So we're going to take our 165 and we're going to divide it by the daily amount, which is 3 3/4. We know that we don't divide in this situation. When we have fractions, we're going to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So the 165 stays there. I'll put it over 1 just for general purposes, and this is going to be 3 times 4, which is 12, 13, 14, 15. So I have 15 over 4. Now my next step is to leave the 165 over 1, change the division to multiplication, and take the reciprocal of the number following the division sign. And now I'm going to do some fancy division. So 15 goes into 165, let's see, I think 11 times, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to cancel that out, put 11 here, and cancel that out and put a 1 there. I shouldn't put my 11 here. So now my fraction is 11 times 4 over 1 times 1. And my answer is 44. And I feel really good because I see that as one of the answer choices. So the answer choice is D. All right. This is our final example. I promise, I promise. So here's what we've got. We're looking at example 5, and we're going to divide algebraic fractions. So notice that there's nothing to substitute in here. So we're going to have to put our thinking caps on. So we're finding the quotient, right, of these two fractions. So we're going to process like we usually do, 5 over 3ab times the reciprocal. We take the reciprocal of the number right after the division sign. I've said that enough today, right? All right, just want you to remember it. Okay, as I look at this, it looks like cross-canceling is definitely a possibility here. 5 goes into itself 1 time, 5 goes into 15 3 times. The next thing that I'm noticing is that I've got 3AB, that means this is 3 times A times B, and then I have A times B times C here. Believe it or not, what I'm seeing is that, and I'll highlight it, what I'm seeing is that these guys are actually common factors. So what that tells me is I can divide out this term by AB, and I'm left with 3, and I can divide this term by AB, and I'm left with C. It made my life much simpler. 1 times C is C, and I'm left with 3 times 3, which is 9. So I have C over 9, and that's its simplest form. I know that that last example may have been a little bit tricky. We can talk about it a little bit more in class. Please ask me about it if you didn't feel very comfortable. And I look forward to talking to you guys really soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.